Pray together. We thank God for who he is. We thank him for what he's done. And the last words we say are either our prayers or just telling each other, love you, good night. That's a way to dedicate. That's just the Sabbath. All the way. And on the seventh day, he rested. And it's curious because a lot of us just, stop there. We say God rested. But he made it holy. He blessed it and he made it holy. That was part of what he did on the Sabbath. And throughout biblical history, this idea of Sabbath, it grew and it changed. Well, it didn't change, but it grew. It was like this bud of resting in God grew into something really big. So turn over to Deuteronomy 5. This is where Moses is talking to Israel. They're about to walk into the promised land to a new generation. And here he mentions the Sabbath. It's Deuteronomy 5:12. Moses says, observe the Sabbath to keep it holy as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. Your son, your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, your ox, your donkey, your livestock, the sojourner who's with you, your male servant, your female servant, may rest as well with you. Verse 15. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely had phases where I think keeping the Sabbath day holy is the only one I do right? Where every other mistake I make, at least on Sunday, I don't do a thing. I go to church and I watch TV, Sabbath complete. Well, not quite. This idea of Sabbath, this might rock you a little bit or change your mind. But the Sabbath is a day of rest, but it's not a day of chilling. God rested on the seventh day, but he still blessed the day and he made it holy. And here we see God, he had this day. Israel was supposed to have this day where they aren't supposed to work, their friends aren't supposed to work, their servants aren't supposed to work, their cows aren't allowed to work. And it's all to set it aside for something particular. It's to make it holy, separate it, make it special. And it's really just for one thing. And meant to not work on Sundays, Saturdays, the Sabbath. And even in Mark 2:27, Jesus said, let me just not mess this up. He says right here, Jesus said to him, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It's clear that the Sabbath day is not something to just be followed. But we Americans have this thing where we always listen to the don'ts. We always hear, don't work on the Sabbath day, but we never remember who God is on Sabbath day. And same thing here. We always use this text as I don't have to obey the Sabbath anymore because it's for me, not me for it. But listen, the Sabbath is for you. Remembering who God is, remembering what he's done for you is best for you. That's what God has done. He's done all of this for you. And so the Sabbath day is supposed to be a day of remembrance. Let's look on a bigger scale. Flip over to the book of Leviticus. A very scary book. It's a book about being pure before God. There's all these sacrifices in the first portion. There's these laws. And there's a scene where a couple priests are just they mess up and they don't worship God in the right way. And the whole book is all about like, how can we be clean in front of God? And then there's this wonderful part where God purifies things using the Day of Atonement. And in chapter 23, we see where things are starting to come to a conclusion. The conclusion of God doing his work of purifying his people. God says, throw a party. And then he said, throw another party and another. I won't read the whole chapter, but just read the paragraph titles. Feasts of the Lord, the Sabbath, the Passover, the Feast of First Fruits, the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Booths. All of these are huge parties. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but all of these have the exact same purpose as the Sabbath, It's specific events to remember who God is and what he's done to a bigger degree. Now, the three big feasts here, Passover, Day of Atonement, Feast of Booths, with these, you had to take vacation days. Like the entire people of Israel picked up from their land, their house, their work, traveled, all to remember specific things about what God's done at specific times of the year. Now, in the theme of being fiercely applicable, fiercely practical, we don't have to follow feast days. The Hebrew calendar is hard enough to understand because it's like a lunar calendar and it's weird. But we're Americans, and we can capitalize on our great events, our statewide parties. We have Memorial Day coming up. It's a day where we remember those who have passed, who've given us freedom. Use Memorial Day to remember who Christ is and what he has done. He has died so that we might be free. Christmas will be coming around the next corner, where we are all about this advent of God coming down because we needed him. We were stuck in our sin, and he came for us in the worst and hardest way possible. He became a man in a dirty place and ended up getting beat and killed. And that's what we remember. Easter will be coming around the other corner, where we are explicitly remembering how Christ died and rose from the death, conquering death, killing death once and for all. Take your calendars out. Make that week leading up to these events something special. The Bible, it even asks for pretty serious things. Like one of these parties, you even spend a third of your income on food and alcohol. I'm not suggesting you do that. And like being able to feed all your friends and family and those who are poorer. Like the entire country shook. Like I've always grown up with at least one family within like 3 or 4 houses of me that just blasted mariachi every Friday. And it's like, that's what I grew up with. And so it's a comfort sound to me. But that sound of people celebrating should be the sound of Christians. Remembering who God is, remembering what he's done, turning your amp to 11 and shouting who he is. Use these events. That is one way that God set apart time to be his, to be special, to be something. And we usually use it as a chance to get or give gifts or celebrate with family. These things are good. But we should set aside time to be God time. On like the daily, on the weekly, and even looking at the whole calendar. But things get even bigger than that. God is very serious about the things that he's done. Who he is very important to his people, and he does not want them to forget. He wants them to be refreshed every day. He wants times where you could actually like sit down and put more time into it, like on Sabbaths, where you could just sit and think or meditate or journal or whatever to figure out who God is and what he's done. Even these bigger parties so that you could be with people and celebrate together what God has done. But flip your pages, 1 or 2 pages, to Leviticus 25. The parties get bigger. So there's the idea of a Sabbath, right? Where you work 6 days, and the 7th day is a day of remembering that God is a provider. You don't work that day because you believe God will provide. God takes that further. He takes it really far. He calls for a Sabbath year. So the people of Israel, they are supposed to, chapter 25, verse 3, for 6 years you shall sow your fields, and for 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in its fruits. But in the 7th year, there's a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord.